find or most important relevant? I think it's number 2. He discusses 4 distinct grounds for opinion. Which do you find? Which 2, I guess the question asks. So which 2 are most relevant and important?
Well, I don't know, like, the ones that I was important were, when he said that an opinion, even though it's, kind of like silence, it still, like, has grounds to be true. And I think that's important around this era because, there's a lot of different scientific things coming about, and there's a lot of people that still oppose, like, all these new thoughts. And even though those people are, like, saying, like, no, that can't be true because, like, it's against religion in some way or form, like, there is still some truth to it. And also, I think, this other one, I think that the other one I thought was important was, like, that, like, a public opinion, like, usually, like, opinions for others are kind of, like, prejudice. That's what I interpret the last point as, kind of. I think that, like, that opinions will be held with prejudice instead of rational means. And I thought, again, the same kind of thing about, like, how each person has their own views of everything. And, like, right now, like, this is, like, there's so many ideas going around. And, like, you have to keep in mind that, like, every single person is like, they have their own thoughts.
Well, I kind of thought, though, like, the third one, I kind of interpreted it, like, that unless an idea is, like, fully discussed and, like, interpreted by the public, then it won't really be understood. And this is what happened a lot of times in history, is that an idea has just been silenced right away, and it ended up being the truth later on, and they never really realized it was the truth because no one really looked at it.
I think number 2 is really important, with the collision of diverse opinions, that the remainder of the truth has any chance of being supplied. Really in politics, like with the debt issue, half of the people say, cut government spending, and the other half say raise taxes. And I think to do both would be to cut, or to use us as a deficit.
Well, I just you want to go over?
Sure.
Alright.
Well, I also agreed with Kate that the first one was one of the most important, but it was on, like, when Metternich and, like, the Concert of Europe, they were all rejected the ideas of, like, nationalism and liberalism because, well, Austria obviously couldn't survive with those, but they rejected them as false, and, like, he said that he was, like, above, like, there was a quote in the textbook that said, like, he was, like, really egotistical, and he thought himself, like, above everybody else. And then I connected that to the assuming our own infallibility. So.
Kind of going off of that, like, I agree with the first one. If you silence an opinion and you don't really take the time to listen to it, it causes a lot of repercussions because people are going to try and make their opinions be heard. And I think that's partially, like, causes of some of the revolutions that we talked about in the 48s and, like, I don't know that was 1 or 2 ago. But if you want your opinion to be heard and people aren't listening, you're going to try and make people listen to it. And I think that's kind of what the first one is.
I also think the third one's important because it says combination among individuals is clear to the importance so they can, like, form a group together and, like, all associate, so they all work together to make their opinion heard. It's important.
I thought the fourth one also is kind of important because, like, so basically it's just, like, if you don't rebel for a long time, then it seems, like, really bad if, like, people aren't used to it. I think it kind of applies to, like, the opposite manner, I guess, in the 19th century, because if you think about it, like, there's so many liberal forces, like, rebelling that it seems like you should, like, it's expected, like, from, I don't know, like, different and stuff, with, like, Rousseau and everyone, they're, like, trying to get everyone really, like, into it, and then if it's, like, you don't do anything, they're like, why aren't you rebelling?
I also feel like there's, like, in the first one, there's kind of a hint of almost skepticism and kind of hints at how science is being looked at, like, much more, in a much better light now. Because, like, it almost reflects the, like, skepticism in the fact that it says that if any opinion is silenced, an opinion for aught we can certainly know be true, to deny this we assume our own infallibility. So it's almost like doubt, like we have to doubt everything because we don't know what's true. Like things that we accept as truth now, probably know could be wrong. So.
Yeah, I'm going to kind of go back to Hannah's point with first ground for opinion being really good and all that. And, yeah, I mean, with the liberal ideas that were all going around at the time, I mean, they weren't popular. I mean, they were popular amongst the people, but the governments themselves weren't really making them popular, and they were trying to suppress them. And without those liberal ideas, then we wouldn't have really seen any of the revolutions of the 30s and 48s. So, I mean, it's kind of weird to think about what would have happened if those liberal ideas wouldn't have gotten around.
I agree with Scout with the second one. Though the science opinion may be an error, it may contain a portion of truth. Because when you have a political science, you have so many people and so many, I guess, like leaders that not a lot of opinions get said, and they might be the one to like lead you, I guess, out of battle, or the one to create the peace. So you always have to make sure that everybody says something, even though you think that, like, the person sitting next to you, just like, oh, well, they're really weird, they're from Austria, like, they're not going to have anything to say. Their opinion might have truth to it, and they might be the one to lead you forward.
I thought an interesting part of the second one was that, like, it said that just because the majority believes it's true does not mean it is true. And this was, like, right around the time that mass society was, like, you know, I guess introduced because, I mean, we're just learning about this right now, but they're, like, there's all these ideas that are coming about, and just because, like, everybody else believes them doesn't mean necessarily that they're true.
Yeah, I kind of, like, off of that, I think, like, when that started, the mass society started growing, I think, like, people didn't necessarily know whether it was the right way to go, but as they saw that everybody else wanted it, they're like, you know, if everybody else wants it, I might as well want it myself anyway. So.
Yeah, I like the second one, because I kind of related it to, like, decision-making and how you're supposed to, like, view all the, like, pros and cons of something before you actually make a decision. So, like, you're supposed to see all the opinions and different points of view before actually, like, choosing what to do on something.
I think another part of that, too, is that with every group, like, it says there's, like, truth to both sides, and I think that in the opposite manner, there are also, like, extremists of both sides that are wrong, so I think that there's kind of, like, there's a middle ground, and then there's also, like, representation of, like, the ends of the spectrum from both sides.
My favorite part is at the end when he says, if resistance waits till life is reduced nearly to one uniform type, all deviations from that type will be considered immoral and even monstrous and contrary to nature. I think it's funny because he's kind of saying, like, without liberty, then there's going to be only one party that dominates politics, and nothing will change from that. And I think that's interesting.
I feel like he's warning against, like, I feel like it's almost a reflection of what, like, Nita and Lucas were kind of saying about how, like, people will kind of jump on this huge, like, bandwagon, like, once mass politics starts, like, because think about it, like, secret ballot is, like, just starting to come about, and, like, a couple of these things, I feel like he's, like, warning society against, like, what he predicted would happen, like, bandwagon, all that stuff.
Kind of going off, like, what Emma said, the ones that I personally put, or I thought the first two were the most important, like, a combination of both of them, like, how she said you have to listen to everybody's opinion even though you don't, like, may not like the person whose opinion you're listening to, but if you don't listen to everybody's opinion, you don't get, like, all perspectives, but if you do listen, you can, like, take bits and pieces of everybody's opinion and put them all together to, like, find the best possible option.
Yeah, and also he says with his third ground for a good opinion, even if the received opinion be not only true, but the whole truth, unless it is suffered to be, and actually is vigorously and earnestly contested, it will, by most of those who receive it, be held in a manner of prejudice, with little comprehension or feeling of its rational grounds. And, I mean, that just kind of ties in there, because, I mean, while these opinions that are going around might also be true, I mean, people are going to have that one little thing that says, nope, I'm not going to believe it, like with the creationist and evolutionist debate. I mean, there are the evolutionists who are saying, this is science, this is true, we've proven it multiple times, but then there's also the creationists who are saying, no, the Bible says this, we're believing in the Bible. So
I think going off what you said, for the people to have their liberty, I guess then they have the right to say they don't want to listen. I mean, that's fine, but I think he's saying, we have liberty, but this is what we have to do inside of the liberty. We have to all listen to keep the freedom going, or else it's gonna go away because we're not listening and we're gonna do our own thing. So it almost becomes like sectioned off. You become your own, I guess, political realm. Really?
Going off what Elena said about at the end where he says that we'll all succumb to like a one uniform type and everything else will be considered like immoral or monstrous or contrary. And I think he's warning us about mass society, because once we become one full unit or uniform unit, anything that tries to change will like get put down. For example, like those revolutions or different ideas that were put in, they just get suppressed and get stuck with one.
Okay, I just made this connection. I recently read a book called Anthem, and it's about the world becomes like a big giant socialist society, and there is no self. It's just as the whole, and it was talking about how this guy, he discovers electricity on his own, but he's not a scientist, so they don't accept it, and they were debating whether or not to allow it, and they said it took him 50 years to get the candle in mass production, and it's saying how change can't happen if everybody's thinking the same way. I just thought that was kind of a cool connection.
So what is liberty according to John Stuart Mill?
Liberty of conscience, liberty to unite as long as you hurt anybody, liberty to plan your own life and do what you will.
But you use liberty to define liberty. What's liberty?
Freedom.
Freedom of opinion, I think.
Natural rights.
Freedom to be who you want to be an individual, instead of be grouped with other people
The ability to do anything and the ability to do anything unless it harms someone, I think.
There's also the freedom to. I think there's also the freedom to express yourself. So the freedom of what he said. It's expressing and publishing opinions, but
Even though expression was a specific freedom that he discusses, I feel like it applies to all of them, because if you have these freedoms but you're not willing to act like you have them, or the government isn't willing to act like you have them, expression itself is makes up all the freedoms, because you're able to exercise your right to have these freedoms, based on pursuits or expressing your opinion or freedom to unite.
I also think it's important to accept differences in opinion and liberty.
Yeah. He also, trying to find it in here, he said, I think actually literally said this, that basically liberty should go to the point where you feel like you're stable in your well-being, because that's kind of it's the grounds of all well-being is feeling free to the point where you, I don't know, you're balanced.
Going off the Scout, I think when she said accept differences of opinion, I think that's the whole point of the 4 distinct grounds of opinion, is he's just telling you to accept everyone's opinion and listen to it and try and find the truth in it, because it may help you in the long run.
That was my point of my question. We got there. As I was listening, as you guys talked about the 4 things, I think we're looking at it almost too limitedly. We're kind of okay, it's just this. We got to be thinking really in the big picture of what he's speaking of. What is liberty? What does that mean? And you always have to think about, you guys know this by now, when he's writing and where he's writing are just as important as anything else, right? So when I think about, and I'm going to move us on. We need to get Marx and Bernstein in. Think about what events, concepts, and or ideas do you think influenced him when he wrote this in 1859? What was going on that pretty much pushed John Stuart Mill to feel like I have to put this down on paper? What was it?
was like, wasn't he like on exile in England?
By the way, last hour did the same thing. We'll turn and look at the timeline. Thank goodness there's actually something up there now. But
I think he was like, wasn't he like in England when he? Well, he's in English. Never mind. I was thinking someone else. I was thinking.
yeah, but why is that important?
What's his face?
I feel like around this time, like England has gotten to the high point of like making a lot of liberal reforms and like kind of pushing democracy. His thoughts kind of seem to be like with liberty of each person and their own opinion. Like that is like ultimately what democracy is like each person allowed to express their opinion through their vote. I guess it's not exactly what England has, but it's kind of what they're pushing towards. And also, doesn't he like believe in a lot of women's rights stuff? Because I know in the book it said that he like wrote a book with his wife about how women should also have their opinion expressed. I feel like all of that like contributes to this about how he thinks that each person, man or woman, has complete rights over their thoughts and like conscience.
Well, and around this time, this is why I thought of this. Bismarck in Germany, for one, was like suppressing any liberal ideas, and this was right after Metternich and stuff like that. And like, they're like, he's like, you can't just do this without listening to him. You have to listen to him first and decide whether they're true or not.
What is this right after 1859?
Ugh.
It's a whole chapter. Not quite. That's starting to happen. I just jumped in the driver's seat. Okay. Put my seatbelt on. All right. Industrial Revolution started in the late 1700s. Started taking off after 1815 in continental Europe. Okay, so Industrial Revolution, the impact of that on Europe. I'm surprised nobody said something about the 1848s.
I was gonna say something.
Think about what they were pushing in the 1848s, and then following that is nationalism. And this is right amongst the time of nationalism. Britain doesn't need it, right? So it's not really a part of what he wrote, because he doesn't need it. Britain's already there.
Jingoism.
So thinking about that, why are they still talking about liberty after the 48s?
People still aren't happy.
So you don't have it yet.
What kind of liberty? I'm really guiding you now. What kind of? I had to do this last hour too. What kind of liberty? Is there a stratification of different liberties? Is this like how we move across a continuum? Like we're here, but we want to be here. Is that what he's talking about? Are they here and want to be there?
Well, it's more about social liberty, like freedom to express your opinions and
That's
be
political.
able.
I feel like it's like, is this something to do with the fact that like socialism is coming in? Like every single person.
I feel like he's almost like screaming at the continent because like Britain already has states, and the continent is still kind of still working. So I feel like he's trying to like tell them like what they should do with this.
But the Chartists are still working at this time.
Maybe he's working on getting like rights to all, because I know like before what just happened with like some kind of act was like in this chapter is that like the agricultural workers just got the right to vote, and so like he was before this time, so I feel like he was saying like more people should get the right to vote and we should have more reform acts to keep pushing that, like even to women.
So there was some liberty, but not enough.
Yeah.
And is there always enough? That's another thing to think about. Is liberty something that you just reach and then, oh, I'm done? Or is it something, when you think about a list he made, his document is a lot deeper than I think anybody really gives it credit for. If you really think about what do you mean by what liberty, and that's why I asked you, what is liberty? My goodness, we need to move on. The St. Simonians, who wrote this, by the way?
Sounded painful.
St. Simon.
He wrote it about Henry St. Simon and the idea, right? Okay, now I need you to listen carefully. I got a mouthful coming. Scott, you can cheat and read if you want. In French socialism, Saint Simon was considered to be an utopian socialist. We got that, we know that. For this doctrine, the industrial society was divided by the worker people and the non-worker people, which we call thieves. However, the social improvement in this ideal society would depend on that everyone worked and that there was no man-to-man exploitation. The society would be divided into three classes: the wise and artists, who would rule the society, and the owners and the workers. How is that possible? How is that going to work? How do you see this in the document shaping?
I feel like that would never work because, like, how could you classify people as wise or non-wise? Like, there's no standard at all. Like you just can't do it. And then, like, everyone is a human and wants to improve, and so it's like, I mean, like, if there's workers and owners, I feel like that's like another form of slavery. Just like you classify them as like worker, you're not gonna like improve at all. Like you're stuck. It's like feudalism again.
Well, I feel like it's not possible in our time or his time at all. I feel like he's kind of senile to think that it actually was possible in his time. For that to happen, we would have to completely understand. Like we'd have to be so far advanced. We have to like understand the genetic makeup of everybody, understand exactly what everyone was worth, like down.
Okay, but like
So that's not possible for a long time. So I don't.
in
It's
like
not possible.
the workers and owners thing, so he's abolishing ownership to make ownership.
Yeah.
Look at the
Because,
text,
like,
you guys. The text will help you.
He calls them idlers and stuff like that, and then like they still have a place in this society, and he said like that doesn't really make any sense to me.
Well, he said that they would go to work because if they weren't like living off somebody else, if they weren't benefiting, if they weren't exploiting, then they would have to work, so they would be no longer idle.
But then wouldn't the laborers be the idle ones? Like
They'd all be working. So
Look at the document here, you guys. They talk about how it explains how they want society, the utopian view of society, how it would be structured. What does it say?
I think he kind of sees them as like a family, because he mentions some things about father, mother, sister, daughter.
As the laborers gained power, they would demand the reduction of interest and rents. This being the case, that would become of the proprietors when those reductions became so great that they could no longer live on their interest and rents. They would go to work.
So interesting, it says, according to the Saint Simonians, humanity was headed for a situation in which individuals would be classified according to their capacity and salaried according to their work. So does that mean that that's how they view people? Is that what he's saying he wants everyone to be thought of as?
The salary according to their work kind of confuses me because, like, how are you to say, like, oh, you're working harder than you are, so I'm going to give you more money than I'm going to give you? Like, that's just hard to classify people by their abilities. Like, yeah.
Cause like I don't know about you, but like I can run for a long time, but I cannot lift anything to save my life. So like I don't know, and I can do a lot of things better than I can do other things. So if someone's good at doing something and I'm not good at that, does that mean that they're gonna get paid more than me?
Yeah, it's kind of the same. Well, with me, it's the exact opposite. I mean, I can lift stuff, no problem, but then when it comes to running, I mean, I can hardly run more than a football field before I start getting tired. So, I mean, it would be very difficult to classify
I think he wants
pay for ability.
everyone to go to work. The last sentence says they would go to work, replied the Saint Simonians. Like, they're saying they want property abolished because that means people are living by the labor of others, so they don't want people to be holding property. So then what are they going to do? So I guess then they all go to work. They want them all to be like the same level of
But then, like, the laborers gain money, and then they're like above the people that used to own everything, and then it's just like now they're at the top of society.
But I think
So
going
it's just
off
like a
of
circle.
that I think like that's what Marx was talking about, is that the society, he said that it would eventually become that the laborers would overthrow, or the workers would overthrow the owners, and then it would all become classless instead of,
As far as like the classes goes, though, he's like talking about like a respectable like family kind of dynamic, like removing classes and like everybody's like brother or sister to each other. But then he like goes on to say like people are classified by how hard they work, and so like he's trying to remove like a certain kind of class by putting in another type of class, like based off of work effort, I guess.
I feel like this class is almost like the fact that he's like here we're centered the relations. Well, that doesn't make any sense. But it's basically like what I thought was like when you think of a family, like you think of people who aren't competitive with each other and aren't trying to like get ahead of one another. And like the only way for the society to work would be for people. I don't think the like differences in salaries would be good. I feel like if everyone was paid the same salary, like no one like everyone's role is equal and like equally necessary. Like I feel like usually communism stresses that more than what this is saying. Like that every person's role, no matter how big or small, is going to be worth something like is necessary to society. And so if people have like kind of that along with the mindset of like everyone, I'm loyal to everyone, like I don't feel the need to compete at all. If every single person was like that, then this would work. But like
It's kind of like the B movie.
aren't
You
gonna.
know, see that movie? Like, you know how the B movie, they go to school, and then right away they all go to work, and they all do the same thing, and they're all doing it for they're doing it for the good of their community. It's kind of like that. It's like the B movie.
I'm sorry.
Really.
Great connection.
It makes sense.
What doesn't make sense to me though is like the whole time it's like they're trying to stress like equality to a point with like this whole idea of a family, but then like towards the end it almost, I don't know, it strikes me a little bit like, I don't know how to say it, like snarky almost, because it's like as the laborers gained power, they would demand the reduction of interest and rents. This being the case, what would become of the proprietors when the reductions became so great they could no longer live on their interest and rent? They would go to work. So like, I feel like, I don't know, I feel like the concept is supposed to be equality, but if you think about it, I feel like it's a little bit more for like the lower class who's like been exploited. I feel like it's kind of not really for the good of everyone. I feel like it's more for the good of the lower class, because if it really was for equality, I feel like it would, I don't know, take more consideration into like both classes, because I feel like with the upper class it's like, like whatever, they're already well off, like they can work. But then I feel like that sort of is just going back to like a new form of hierarchy. Like if the lower class isn't working, if they somehow can make a ton of money, then basically the role is just reversed and it doesn't make it any better. It's just different.
Yeah, going off of that, I think that when they say like a family was being described, I think that's really true, because they said the name of father was given to the members of each superior degree, and then the ones that were inferior were addressed by mother, sister, and daughter. So he separated the father, or the upper class and the lower class, and I agree with the fact that it's only seeming to the equity of the lower class, because they're the ones doing the work, and so the ones that are being lazy and that are working, they're separated. I think it's yeah.
What do you guys got to go back to? What do the French utopians want?
They just
What
kind
are
of
they
want.
about?
Utopian
They want a
society.
very
It's not even a word.
Well,
I feel like they wanted democracy. They've always, like, the reason for all these revolutions was like just to have like a democracy. Like it even like referenced back like the modest conferences, which before the July Revolution had been held at the Rue or whatever. It like even referenced back to the fact that like they were still thinking about like the July revolutions and what they wanted from that, and like what they wanted like from the revolutions was for like almost like the lower class to have like some kind of voice in what happened in France, and I feel like this whole thing is centered around like everyone having a voice. And that's kind of like the last document.
And another part of that with the whole like utopia thing, like obviously like none of this really can just like work. Like it's just not realistic. And with the whole thing about like the like missionaries, I feel like I don't know, that just like doesn't, well obviously it's not realistic because it's like utopian, but like they would just, I don't know, like everyone would be so like excited about this idea, and like there would be like so many like missionaries going around who like would never, never question it. I feel like that's sort of another part, like to not think that anyone would like be like, well, this is not actually a great idea.
I think they're in general like against competition in favor of a cooperative society. But sometimes I think that like I don't understand how that would work, because if there's no competition, no one's going to try and exceed and go above and beyond and try and improve something if they're not going to get any benefit for it. So then the society would just kind of be stuck somehow because no one wants to work harder.
But I feel
You just nailed utopianism right there. Cooperative society. That's an important thing to get out of this. I think what else can I think toward? We're going to have to move on here in just a second. Then the next thing you got to think about, and you guys I think pretty much have already assessed your beliefs on them, can this work?
Theoretically, on paper, yes, it
Well,
can,
anything
but
can happen.
exactly, but in practice, no.
I thought the second paragraph was kind
It
of
was
funny.
weird.
Like
Oh,
the
yeah.
story that he
Yeah.
starts to tell about all these people like going to like
Yeah.
church or something.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought it was funny though,
That
because
threw me off.
like even the way that
faces.
he describes it, you can just tell that it's not possible. Like he says,
Feeling amongst
like
your
they're sitting there with a mockery in their eyes, but as this person speaks, they all just like have this feeling of like, oh, I believe in this now, and all their skepticism is drawn out of them, and they all feel like sympathy and respect for each other.
What's
And
the
just
point
like
of that, though? What's the point of that?
That's what he like hopes will happen to achieve this, but
Yeah, he's-
realistically,
that's
that's not really.
I'm okay.
like the ideal way that's gonna turn into this type of society.
I'm so sorry for going back to my book again. But
No, stop right here. We're done.
just one thing really fast. Okay, well like they all have their jobs for life, and when they turn 40, they go into this old folks' home and die within 5 years. And so they only live to be about 45 years old. And I'm reading, as I'm reading through this book, I'm like, what is the point of their existence? They're in a constant state of, they're just trying to survive. And everybody's scared, and like, nobody wants change because they know that, because they think that, like, oh, if things change, then things will be bad because no one likes change. Who likes change? No one does. But
in defense of him, I feel like the only way is like ideally realistic is because like there will still be change, because in a cooperative society, like the reason like competition wouldn't spark it. I feel like the need to like do something for someone else would spark it. Like I'm gonna make my community a better place, so I'm gonna try to make this process easier, like spinning Jenny, like flying shuttle, that kind of stuff. And I feel, well, I don't know if this is realistic. Like the way he the only way it would be is like the way he said it, like with a family kind of view towards things, instead of like I'm on my own, I'm defending myself. But the only thing I don't get is he's like, everyone's equal, there are no leaders. But then he says, on a ideal day, after the hall was filed with an eager audience, there appeared two supreme fathers of society, Metzers. Like, how would there be? Would it be the wise?
What he wants to do is take those people who are not doing any of the work and the thieves stealing, and those are doing all the work. They're saying in a socialist and utopian socialist is, you're all equal. You get what you would deserve. You don't just sap from other people. You have to work. That's that last statement was that you would go to work then. They want to make it fair that you get what you deserve. They say that the upper classes are just leeches, basically sucking from everyone else. Okay, but I have to move us to Mark, you guys. We didn't even get to our other question for him. Okay, Mark.
So sad.
I hope you had a fun reading. Fun.
Yeah.
It was
Reading Marx
interesting.
and Engels. I should give Engels credit. I never do that. That's easy. But they talk about the bourgeois, proletariat, and the struggles. What are they talking about here with the bourgeoisie, the proletariat, and the struggles? What is his point he's getting across?
Basically, he's just trying to convey that the upper class is very controlling of the lower class, and that the lower class should lead a violent upheaval of the upper class, so that way they can become the new upper class and kind of spit in the faces of what was the upper class, and have a society where it's ruled by the proletariat.
Well, Well, I feel like they aren't really making themselves a new upper class because it says, I'm paraphrasing here, that they make them itself the ruling class and has swept away conditions for the existence of class antagonisms and abolished its own supremacy as a class. Because there is no antagonists in the proletariat versus bourgeoisie. If there's no issue there, then everyone's equal. There's no need. There's no upper class or no lower class. There's just society.
I feel like that's so unrealistic though, because for someone to have to see that, like they have to look at all the sides, and like these proletariats, like how educated is every single one of them, and how is their ability to look at like this whole society and not want to be on top of it? Like, have they ever even been educated in the fact that like I think he's saying that this is a vicious cycle that's going to keep repeating until someone rises above it and doesn't feel the need to be the ruling people, but the proletariats are like not even that educated, and they just like have experienced oppression, but it's not like they want to, I don't know, like I feel like they don't have a need to fix it.
Well, that's why he wants to establish free education for all children. That's why he wants to establish public schools for children, so everyone has equal education, everyone's equal.
If you think about it, though, this doesn't really make sense, because how many people do you know that when they've gotten power, they have given it up willingly? If not, urged by anybody else. And no one's going to be urging them except the bourgeoisie, and they're going to be like, no, you're stupid, we kicked you out a while ago, so shut up. So if you think about it, he's like, oh, you got to do all this stuff, and then the proletariat will give up their power, and everything will become classist, and it's like, that's never...
Think about what the struggle is. What's the struggle they talk about? The struggle. It's throughout the document. And think about, is it about power? Is this document about power, or is it about something? Is it about something else? What's the struggle?
For equality, upper class versus lower class.
For like a voice, kind of, to be heard.
Well, they had a bit of a voice, but it just wasn't an equal voice. So.
I thought it was just funny because like what Kate was saying about the education of the proletariat, she doesn't think they'd have the capabilities to be able to take the power from the bourgeoisie. But I thought it was just kind of funny reading it because he just kind of has it out for the bourgeoisie. Like, I kind of thought that they wrote about the bourgeoisie as more like an outdated type of class that kind of just like needs to go away now. Like, he refers to like the French Revolution and how saying like they were helpful then and like trying to get their point across, but now like the proletariat kind of needs to like take their stand and just kind of like, he kind of acts almost like the bourgeoisie, like he thinks they'll put up a fight, but he feels like it's going to be more of like a willingness, like, oh, okay, like it's your turn to have power now.
Like, how can you explain how like Tyler can overcome the bourgeoisie, because the bourgeoisie is kind of helping them along unknowingly by like enforcing and helping industrialization like come about, and so then that just makes the workers become more stronger, so they have more power to overthrow them.
You said there's a paragraph on the second page that says the immediate aim of the communists is the same of that of any other proletarian parties: formation of the proletariat into a class and overthrow the bourgeoisie supremacy. So I feel like that just kind of sums up like the first page of their first. They say, here's what the bourgeoisie did, here's what they did wrong, and here's what we want to do to fix it. Kind of, I feel like is what they're saying.
Well, like he's saying how, he also says how, like, going back to what, I don't know, someone said about the French Revolution, it was like saying how like they were fighting to end feudalism and stuff like that, and then afterwards they became the new feudalists, so to speak. And I think that he isn't looking at this correctly, because he's looking at it like, oh, the proletariat's going to overthrow the bourgeoisie and then everything's going to be great. But I think the same thing will just happen again, because history is bound to repeat itself.
Yeah, I don't think he was like, he was thinking about the immediate events happening right now. I don't think he was thinking too far ahead. Because right now, if he just overthrows, we're happy and giddy. But then, like, I don't know, years from now, we'll realize that we did something wrong. I don't know if the overthrowing was probably the right thing to do.
I thought it was kind of interesting how he sort of looked at the bourgeoisie of, like, I don't know, like losing the meaning of things, like basically just being really, not like social climbing, but sort of just like not giving any worth to things and like doing whatever they can to just sort of get to the top. Because I think that's sort of referring back to like during the revolution when like bourgeoisie obviously didn't want to drown the most heavenly ecstasies of religious fervor, of chivalrous enthusiasm, of like all this stuff, and egotistical calculation. So basically just like doing whatever they can to like feed their egos and like get as high as they can, like in their little thing, in their hierarchy.
I thought I don't know what you usually call them, like the conditions on the second page of his document were interesting. Because like they're outlines more of like a communist society, but some of them like are actually like ones that would make sense in a non-communist society, like having an income tax or free education. But then some of them are more like, whoa, like having industrial armies, especially for agriculture, or like, I don't know, I just thought like the industrial army scene was kind of interesting. Like, I don't know, I kind of had trouble picturing that at first, but I don't know, I thought it was kind of fun.
I like it.
The image in my head is pretty funny. I'm just imagining like rows of soldiers with pitchforks just standing there.
Well, I was like, he said something, or he or someone else said that the current industrialization was like an industrial army because like the workers were privates and they were underneath this hierarchy of ranks, and I think that's what he meant by the industrial army, not literally an industrial army, but like he wants to. This really doesn't make any sense if you think about it like I'm thinking about it though, and he says establishment of industrial armies when he was talking about destroying the industrial armies. I didn't really understand that.
No, I think he meant industrial armies. He just meant like not an army fighting a specific like person or group, an army fighting a lack of a product, like an army designed to fill a void of a product. I don't know, something like that.
Going on to some of the other conditions, I kind of think when he says the communists are reproached with desiring to abolish countries and nationalities, and then later the working man have no country, I feel like that's almost like ingenious. Like it's the only way that he would, like nationalism is like a huge thing, and like that's what like brings people together, and by abolishing that it almost like brings everyone together with each other, or like completely breaks any bonds. I don't know if it's possible, but I feel like that would be the only way to guarantee, like, well not guarantee, but like another like way that this would be more possible than before.
So think about what they mean by communism. What is their end? What's their goal?
Completely classless society where everyone's equal and no one has any individual self-defining distinctions.
And it encompasses the whole world.
It does.
Which is
One nation.
interesting because if you think about it, it's really unrealistic. Because if you look at modern day communism, it's not very equal. Like in places like China and the Soviet Union, where it was very not like this. So I just think it's interesting. I wonder what Marx and Engels would think of it if they saw the end result, what they would.
Well, the thing is that in like a truly communist society, there has to be someone or something above everybody else making sure everything fit and worked properly. But the thing is, if just one person is jealous of that power, then the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, I don't think that if everyone is equal, there's no judging of whether whether you're doing it right or I agree that there needs to be something over everyone to decide that we're going in the right direction and we're doing this the right way and this is the way we should be going now.
Do you think Marx, and I'm just going to leave our next question.
Okay.
No, it's fine. No, we need to get to Bernstein. Do you think, though, thinking him, would you consider Marx and Engels extremists?
At the time, for sure.
Yeah.
But also think of the background where they come from. Marx comes from a well-to-do family, Engels from an industrialist family. Would you expect a document like this to be from someone who's on, if I can put on the dark side, on the other side?
No.
If you read this, you'd say, oh, this is so a worker that wrote this, right? And then you realize, wow, they are destroying their own worlds, in essence, by just restructuring everything, right? Marx believed in revolution.
Oh yeah.
Let's go to Bernstein then. How would you define Bernstein's socialism as evolutionary? I had to put that in my question. What makes it so evolutionary?
Because
gradual transition into socialism instead of one giant violent catastrophe.
He basically wants reforms instead of like one big revolution. He says factory legislation and democratization and just making trade unions more free will help, because it was like, it's kind of funny because it's like exactly 50 years after Marx and Engels, and then he realizes like, wait, what the heck, like revolution hasn't happened yet, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, I've also noticed that with Bernstein's ideas, I mean, they're very interchangeable and also very adaptable. I mean, it's let me just see what I put down here. But yeah, I mean, he said that the main thing with Marx and Engels' view of one big, huge socialist change is that they didn't really think in the long run and how their ideas would change over time. Like what Scott was saying with how if you were to show Marx and Engels like a modern communist society and how much it's changed from true communism, according to Marx and Engels. Whereas with Bernstein, I mean, it's very interchangeable, and the example I put down is that it's kind of like a Lego set. I mean, he's got all the pieces, and he's got the instruction book to put together the set, but then, like, the builder of the set can just kind of put in their own little changes and add in little pieces, like a little guy in a cockpit of a plane or something, and not have it just completely throw off the entire idea of what's going on.
It kind of also reminds me, what is it story, like the tortoise and the hare? Isn't it like slow and steady wins the race? Like, I feel like it's kind of like, I feel like he basically is just thinking that you can't get like too ahead of yourself and build up these like big, far off, like kind of unrealistic things. Well, I guess they didn't think it was unrealistic, but like, I feel like you need to be a little bit more like in the now. Like he says like I don't know, it's like, I'll just like paraphrase, but he basically said that he focuses on the immediate future and he doesn't focus as much like really long term, and I think that definitely shows like I think reforms just seem more like controlled rather than this big like upheaval of the upper class.
So when Marx talks about like the proletariat overthrowing the bourgeoisie, he acts like it's no big deal, but I feel like it'd be pretty though, like millions of people would die if it went across the whole world. It'd be incredibly violent, and I feel like Bernstein is just like, it's not worth that because so many people would die.
I feel like Bernstein is like a realist almost, more so than like idealism. And also like what Bernstein is suggesting is like, he's German, right? Instead of following French, I feel like he's like, let's follow what Britain's doing, because this like the gradual system of reforms is like exactly what's established already in England. Right.
I think that's like all of the, like, though obviously in most cases none of these ideas from Saint Simon to Marx and Engels to Bernstein, like none of their ideas really ended up coming true, especially with Marx and Engels and with the overthrowing. Like, I feel like he's got the best plan, like, as to how to execute it, like saying, oh, like, it's not just gonna happen, like, with Saint Simon, or like how it's gonna be this huge catastrophe and like the proletariat's gonna overthrow. But he actually has like a good idea of how to set his plan in motion.
I don't know about you, but after I read like the Communist Manifesto and then Problems with Socialism, I saw Marx and Engels as extremely far-sighted. So it's like they're like looking across a lake, they can see the other side of the lake, but they don't know what's in the lake. And then I saw Bernstein as someone who saw the lake, but he couldn't see what was on the other side. And like, I feel like if they could have combined like their ideas, then we might actually be a lot different than we were today. But like the world as a whole would be a lot different. But they were separated.
Okay, last question to leave you with, and I know we didn't really have enough time to talk about Bernstein, so if you think that these may be expressive in your paper. How do all of these different ideas exist at the same time? I want you thinking about that in your conclusion. Because don't they all exist at about the same time? But they're so different. But did you guys decide that Bernstein's the most realistic?
Yeah.
Putting John
Right.
they're all in their
Right.
own little bubble.
Right.
And they are things. They're
I
physically
don't really care.
The Highlander.
Highlander.
Yes! The people stand around.
You guys
terrible movie.
Dude, yeah, it was bad, but like that there can be only one or whatever quote. There can be only one. It's such a sweet quote. Yeah. Okay. Should I post this on the fake book again?
Post that on the fake.